Coming right up, we're going to talk to one of the most underappreciated lead singers in rock and roll history. He doesn't do a lot of interviews, so it's really cool to get him. This powerful rock voice tells us the story of one of their greatest songs in their vast catalog of hits, a song that they were reluctant to release at the time. The story is coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you have ever lip-synced in front of the mirror to your favorite song, we've all done it. You're gonna dig this channel. Make sure that you subscribe below right now to experience up close and personal stories from the great ones, of the great ones. Oh boy. We also have a Patreon below. When you support us there, you do help our mission of curating this virtual museum of rock and roll, and we give you more content. Here's one of our new shirts as well. You can get one at professorofrock.com. It's in the description. See if you remember what this came from, what this is parodying. Choose music. The Guess Who? They were a Canadian band who have so many fascinating stories in the annals of rock and roll. Obviously known best for their classic rock mega hit, American Woman. American Woman, stay away from me. They had 14 top 40 hits here in America over the course of 3 different names. Actually, first they were Chad Allen and the Reflections in 1962, and they broke through with the hit Shaking All Over. That went to number 22. Shaking all over. A few years later, they adopted the name that they would go with, The Guess Who. That was in 1965. Their most successful period as a band was from 1968 to about 1975. The band was led by the underrated and explosive singer, keyboardist, Mr. Burton Cummings, along with guitarist Randy Bachman, who later formed the group Bachman Turner Overdrive with some classic hits of their own. Bachman is the way you say it, I promise. They had 5 #1 singles in their native Canada and 2 here in the States. Before they blew up radio with American Woman, they had a song that really paved the way. It was their first top 10 hit. It was the beautiful and just disarming ballad, These Eyes. That hit number 6 in 1969. It's been a long time. Song written by Cummings and Bachman. These eyes cry. I love These Eyes. When you hear the first few seconds, wherever you are, at least for me, you know exactly what song it is. It's a true classic. It's actually used in one of the funniest moments in the movie Superbad. These eyes are crying. It's also been covered a whole lot. I was extremely fortunate, like I say, to have a long-ranging conversation with the Canadian Blazer, Burton Cummings, about his ascent to the top of the charts and the story behind their first hit, These Eyes. This is a great interview. You're going to like it. It's coming up next. As we go into this interview, I want to especially thank our sponsors, Zenni Eyewear, the frames that fuel my fire, if you will. Make sure to head over to Zenni.com. I'm serious, you'll never want for another pair of glasses. These guys are awesome. Do a virtual try-on, check out their latest styles, add some sunglasses, great features to enhance your view of the world. Here's the great Burton Cummings with this story of the Guess Who and These Eyes. I will never be free, no, my baby, no, no.
Here's the thing, in the 60s, I left school in November of 65. In the 1960s, in North End, Winnipeg, there was no support for anyone who was even considering show business. They thought you were out of your mind. A few years later, Red River Community College came along in Winnipeg, and suddenly you could take courses for television production and music and scoring, and suddenly all of it was there.
Oh, yeah.
But it wasn't there when I needed it.
Exactly.
You know, when I really needed that support, none of that was there. I had a couple of teachers that supported my silliness. I was always writing poems and short stories. And I had a couple of teachers, Mr. Prochuk, bless his heart, he supported that. He always supported that. But really, there was no support for any of that at all.
Yeah.
You know, we were all dreaming about being in the Beatles or the Stones or Manfred Mann or the Zombies or all of that British invasion stuff was going on, and we knew what we wanted to do, but as far as getting there, I don't know. I think really what saved us was CBC television. That's what saved us. And we were doing weekly television, and that got us out of debt. And then the producer in the second season around
Let's Go,
1968.
right?
Yeah,
was the
Let's
TV
Go,
show.
first year.
Here's the Guess Who and Tin Soldier.
And the second year was called Where It's At. And the producer, Larry Brown, he knew Randy and I were starting to write songs together. And he said, look, you've got a national outlet here. Every Thursday, you're in everybody's living room in Canada for half an hour.
Right.
Why don't you do a couple of your original songs here? He said, I'm willing to let you do a couple of your original songs. One of the ones we chose to do was These Eyes.
These eyes are crying.
Jack Richardson, our producer for all the Guess Who 15 albums on RCA, happened to be watching the show that day in Toronto when we came on, and he loved the song so much, and this is a true story.
Wow.
He mortgaged his house. Unbeknownst to his wife, he mortgaged his house to take us to New York on the strength of that one song. And we cut the first album, Wheatfield Soul, and These Eyes. Well, the rest is, you know, the rest is well known, documented. But it didn't happen overnight. The record, These Eyes, was a big hit in Canada first. It didn't take off in the States till months and months later. And then when it took off in the States, that was such an unusual thing that it took off again in Canada. In '69, it was a hit again in Canada. We really were at the beginnings of what is now a very healthy Canadian scene.
You were the first.
I'm telling you, in the early days, we had a lot of back-to-back failure, a lot of back-to-back heartbreak and failure. And we had about 9 singles before These Eyes, all of which died a miserable death. And if we put a single out and it sold 8,000 or 10,000 units, we'd break out the champagne. That was a big deal to sell 10,000 units in Canada in those days. Are you kidding me? Then years later, in '77 or '78, I had the first, as a solo guy, I had the first first triple platinum album ever in Canada, Dream of a Child. So
huge.
When you think about it, there was only about 25 million people in Canada at that time to sell almost 500,000. Good Lord, that's 1 out of every 4 or 5 people in the country had bought that album. That's unbelievable.
That's amazing. And of course, Jack Richardson made so many great records. Also, Badfinger.
And just hold on, keep you feeling strong.
And of course, Bob Seger, Night Moves.
Working on a night move.
But I will say this before you go any further. We were the first ones that Jack really got going. And I'll tell you, when we did an album for Coca-Cola in 1967 in Toronto, the engineer on that was Phil Ramone, who went on to be a legendary producer for 1 million people.
That's moving up and I'm moving out.
He was Jack's engineer on that. I mean, we were around in a very, very early days of a lot of development, especially the Canadian scene, you know, especially the Canadian music industry.
Well, These Eyes went number 6 in America. You got your deal with RCA.
And I will never be free, no.
Let me ask you about writing that song, because I always love the story about how you and Randy got together at your mother's house, right?
I hadn't even left home yet.
Her piano.
Yeah.
Tell me how that song came out.
I hadn't even left home yet. It was on Bannerman Avenue at a little house in North End, Winnipeg. He had some pieces. I had some pieces.
He was calling it These Arms. Right?
Yeah, he wanted to call it These Arms.
For you, these arms.
And actually, interesting point here. I'm the keyboard player. Everybody thought that was my piano riff. That boom, boom, da 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 da. It wasn't. That was Randy's.
To hold you again.
For a guitar player to come up with that piano riff, I thought was very clever. It's a D minor 7 chord. For a guitar player, to come up with that. I thought it was a great hook. So I'll give Randy his total due on that. But his lyrics weren't all that great. I always make a joke about it on stage. I say, well, you know, Randy had some pieces and I had some pieces and we squashed all the pieces together. And then I refined his rather mediocre lyrics. I mean, I make a joke about it, but Randy and I were pretty good at squashing stuff together.
Right.
We never worked that hard on writing songs, not really. Another one was No Time.
Yeah.
He had that great riff, you know. And he also had the No Time Left For You, and I started singing on top of that, On My Way to Bed. It's just one of these things. Between Randy and me, it was always like this.
You spoke it, baby.
You also added the middle eight, you refined the lyrics.
These Eyes was done in about half an hour, literally. Yeah. And it was a half hour that changed our lives forever.
I've seen a lot of love, but they're never gonna see another one like I have with you.
There are very few pop songs where you hear the first like 2 or 3 notes and you know exactly what it is, and that's one of those songs. You know,
well, that intro, boom, boom, da 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 da, yeah. You know what was a thrill for us? The very year ours came out, 69 in the States, radio was still very segregated, and ours, being white boys, you know, homogenized white boys from Manitoba, it never would have been played in a lot of the urban areas. The very same year ours came out, Junior Walker and the All-Stars.
Oh, I know. Took it to number 16 on the pop and number 3 on the R&B.
Cut it on Motown. And for Randy and me, as writers, I was still only 21 or 20, you know, and Randy was only about 23. And for a couple of young guys from Winnipeg to have one of the major Motown artists cutting our song we were just walking around 2 feet off the ground. And then we got to do a show with Gary Puckett and the Union Gap and Junior Walker and the All-Stars. And Randy and I went on to Junior's bus, all humble and, you know, doing a Wayne's World, we're not worthy, we're not worthy.
We're not worthy! We're not worthy! We're not...
And we went up to Junior and we just wanted to give him a hug and shake his hand and say how honored we were that a huge Motown, because don't forget, by then, he had about 10 or 12 hit records. Shotgun and Shakin' Finger Pop and What Does It Take to Win Your Love and all those big records.
Gonna go again for you.
We were just thrilled, so I'll never forget that, meeting him that night. And I mean, he's long gone now, but that was a thrill to let him know we were just a couple of young white boys from Manitoba. Here we were with a major Motown star, and he had done our song. You can't imagine how that made me feel. That was just wonderful. Well, and I liked his version too.
Yeah,
you know,
I mean,
with the girls going, these eyes, these eyes, these eyes. I thought it was great.
And it went to number 3 on the R&B charts.
Yeah.
I mean, to have a hit on the R&B charts, because
you know what else was cool about that is
that
certain stations started playing the 2 versions back to back. And I always loved, as they did later with Lenny Kravitz's American Woman and ours.
American woman, get away from me.
I love when they do that, man.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a collector. I'm a music fan, so I love that kind of stuff, you know.
When you guys wrote it together, were you thinking of anything in particular when you wrote it? Were you going through some kind of...
These eyes?
Yeah.
No, that was all hypothetical. I was too young to have gone through any heartbreak yet.
Right.
You know, when Stand Tall and Timeless Love and that stuff came along later, I had already been to the beach and carried the baggage.
So, don't you fall.
But at that time, that was hypothetical. Randy had just gotten married, I think, and we weren't, it was just purely hypothetical.
And there's so many other great versions too, reggae versions. Have you ever heard the reggae versions?
Oh, I've heard many,
Alton
many.
Ellis.
These eyes have been recorded by
I know.
what, 40 or 50 people.
Michael
you know?
Bolton, that was on one of his first records.
Yeah.
Hip hop guy Maestro did it.
Yeah, I forgot about that. You're
Yeah.
right.
Bro, yo, brothers ain't seen what I'm seeing in this game, son.
Angie Stone too has a great version of it.
These eyes have seen a lot of love, but they're never gonna see another one like I had with you.
What was cool is when they used it in the movies. They used it in Stay. Then they used
The
it.
best was Superbad.
I know. Michael Cera.
To get to that party where the bikers are, and they're gonna beat the hell out of him. And his friend says, "Don't hurt him. He's a singer."
He's Jimmy's brother, the guy, the singer. He's the guy with the beautiful voice.
And one of the bikers says, "Well, and if he's a singer, let's hear him sing something." And he sings These Eyes, but not just a line or two.
Yeah.
He actually gets to the bridge and he starts going up. These eyes have seen a lot of love. And he keeps going up.
And you broke it. You broke it.
I haven't met Michael Cera yet, but I'm going to give him a big hug when I do. That was
I know.
fantastic.
Iconic moment. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Leave us a comment about this memorable gem of 1969 and the Guess Who and the powerful pipes of one Burton Cummings. Guy just blows me away. What are your memories of this song and this group? Make sure to subscribe below if you like this content. Click the bell so you never miss out on our daily features. You can actually get more content and support our mission of curating this history of the most wonderful era in the history of popular music. Check out our Patreon link, as your support is so paramount. Get yourself a shirt. Choose music. It's pretty cool. Tell me in the comments if you know what this is from. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.